right. Well, since you brought up Ben Simmons' quest to win Defensive Player of the Year, let's go there next, Mort. He has been very vocal. Doc Rivers has been very vocal. The entire argument, he's like, I guard 1 through 5. I guard the toughest guy on the floor every night. And to his credit, he is one of the only players in the league who has the ability to do so. Is he great at doing every single type of matchup? No. Do the defensive metrics favor him, the publicly available ones? No, they favor Rudy Gobert. So what do you value more? Do you value Simmons' versatility, Gobert, and the metrics that speak well to his candidacy, or do you have a wild card candidate?
I do not. Here's the thing. We've had this debate before, and I think it is so difficult because you have a guy who is just so utter elite at one place on the court, right? Gobert near the basket. And that's not even to say that Gobert is only effective near the basket, but it's clearly there where he's at his very best, if you catch my drift. Right. Like, he's actually decent at coming out and hedging and returning home and all that. It's like he's good at it, but clearly his bread and butter is within, 10 feet of the basket?
Yeah. Somewhere
along those lines. But I mean, then you look at the other side of the spectrum where you have Ben. And Ben is just doing everything in his power to lock down every perimeter player on planet Earth. And both of them are super intriguing. It's just a question of how do you kind of figure out what's most essential. And I'm still reaching that point where if you have someone who essentially functions as a goalie in Gobert, who can take away layups and dunks and drives and completely changes the way that the teams attack the basket, I have to believe, ultimately speaking, that is going to be the most influential defense that you can get. That said, Ben is extraordinary. The way that he can switch, the way that he can pick up both bigger players, smaller players, wings. Okay, so he has a problem with speedy guards, but in his defense, who doesn't?
Right.
Even Marcus Smart will occasionally get completely blown by a Kyrie or someone else. Like, good quality, quick guards, they will get by anyone. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. So I think that perspective is pretty essential. But no, I probably value Gobert most just because of what he does and how it changes the team's offense. That said, I have noticed something with Philly, and I think that's really encouraging. Much like with Kawhi Leonard, and which we talked about years ago, it does seem like opposing offenses try to throw the ball away from where Ben Simmons is on the basketball court. If that isn't the ultimate sign of respect, and if that isn't also the ultimate sign of him affecting how an offense draws up their plays, I don't know what is. So if it comes out to the way that Ben Simmons, just by having his presence on the basketball court, forces teams into completely removing certain aspects of their offense, then you can legitimately make the argument that he might be just as influential as Rudy Gobert. But how the hell do you put a number on it? How do you quantify it? How do you boil something down to give us an ultimate, again, number, stat, whatever, that sort of puts it in, black on white, saying, this is it. We have final confirmation. I don't think that stat exists. I don't think that metric exists. So it does come down to personal bias, personal preference. It comes down to a myriad of analytical tools and eye tests and whatnot. And off of those, I prefer Gobert, but I am not going to sit here and say that Ben Simmons is far off. I think those two are far, far closer than what a lot of people have them, especially Jazz fans. And I apologize. I like you, Jazz fans, but I think you have reached that point where you are dramatically underrating the defense of Ben Simmons while trying to pump up your own guy, which I get. Like, don't get it twisted. I understand your logic, but Ben Simmons is a lot closer to Gobert than you're willing to admit.
Yeah.
So Gobert's still the king, but Simmons is coming for his ass.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you said it well. Defensive metrics in general are... It's just harder to quantify than offensive impact. I think Seth Partnow of The Athletic had a really good piece about this the other day where he's saying even, like what's publicly available is worse than what teams have privately, but even teams' private metrics still aren't great relative to the measuring offensive impact. So...
Yeah, Daryl said it too.
Yeah.
Daryl Morey.
Right.
Morey said it too, yeah.
So, and then Seth was saying, okay, so what's more valuable, a guy who can do everything or a guy who does one thing really, really, really well? And that's not to say Gobert doesn't do other things as well, but like Gobert is without question not as versatile defensively as Ben Simmons. It's not a knock against him. It's just how each team has chosen to deploy their respective defensive stars.
He's a rim protector.
Right.
Yes.
So, if Ben Simmons, as you said, if Ben Simmons struggles against speedy guards like Kyrie or like De'Aaron Fox gave him a lot of trouble earlier this year, and he's having to spend time on those guys, whereas the Jazz know, okay, stretch fives give Gobert a lot of trouble, or if like we're switching him on to James Harden, that's going to give him a lot of trouble. We're not going to do that. So his weaknesses are not as amplified because the team is kind of hiding him from having to overextend himself. Whereas Philly, by either because of personnel, they just don't have anyone else other than Matisse Thybulle to guard that type of player, or just, they're like, screw it, we're just going to test this guy and see what he can and can't do. They're making they're pushing him beyond his comfort zone more often than the Jazz are for Gobert. So, yeah, I mean, it ultimately comes down to which you prefer. And, I think you said it well. Gobert, because of the position he plays, is going to make more of an impact on a possession-by-possession basis because just his presence on the floor means, the Jazz, or opponents of the Jazz know there is a 7-foot something with like a 7'8", 7'9" wingspan standing there ready to contest or block shots. And again, it's not even just blocking, but just getting his arms up. You still have to throw the ball over that massive wingspan. It's going to affect how you attack the basket. So he's closing off driving lanes. He's, making it more difficult for guards to even get into the paint in the first place. Whereas Ben, you said it well too. Like teams could decide, okay, Ben's guarding this player, we're going to try not to give the ball to him, or we're going to try to just keep it away from Ben. We know he's good at getting into passing lanes, and if he gets out into transition, it's over. So we just don't want to create those opportunities. So you can play 4-on-4, basically, and remove Ben from some of the plays. Whereas Gobert, like he's still there. You can't, sure, you can take open threes, but if you are taking a shot anywhere near the paint, there's a pretty good chance Rudy Gobert is involved in that defensive action.
Right.
So
and you can't just shoot threes all game long.
Right.
You need to mix it up. You need to have some drives going, and that's where he can utterly kill you.
Right. So yeah, I mean before I give my answer, do you think there's anyone else realistically in the mix for this award, or is it really these two guys are out far ahead of the...
No, I mean, so Miles Turner got a lot of attention for this award because he was just blocking shots left and right. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that's not important. I'm truly not. I think Miles is having one of those shot blocking seasons that are just going to be, one of those you'll remember in a couple of years, because he is a fantastic shot blocker. But his positional defense, his influence compared to a Rudy Gobert, it's just not the same. I mean, look at how teams operate when they play against the Pacers compared to when they play against the Jazz. Mm-hmm. It is not the same offense. There is not the same level of fear by guards when they go in against the trees. If you go up against Rudy Gobert, you can see how players just are trying to think out of the box. Whereas there is significantly less fear when they go up against Miles Turner. There is this element of, you'll jump at a lot of things. Like, your positional defense isn't really that great. You will chase that block once in a while, and I can kill you on that, because I'll get you up in the air, and I'll have a trailer working on me, and I'll do this behind the back pass, and boom, we have a dunk. Whereas you can't pull that with Gobert. You just can't. That guy is a master at knowing when to jump and when not to jump. And also, this is one of the things that I don't think gets talked enough about when it comes to Gobert. Have you noticed how he never leaps as high as he can? Like, his jumps are small. They're timed. Like, he actually goes in and, like, estimates, okay, how much effort do I put into this jump? Because there's a guy trailing. So if the guy trailing gets the ball somehow, I need to be back on the ground really quickly so I can jump again and challenge that. Like, he doesn't give it that full, like, his full vertical is never on display like Miles Turner's is. He understands just entirely, okay, I need to put this amount of force on my jump for the first attempt, and I have to make sure that the guy working behind the offensive player is also taken care of. That level of, I don't even know what you call it, intelligence, awareness, whatever you want to call it. Miles isn't there. Is he on the right path? Absolutely. Absolutely. Miles Turner is on the right path, but he is not where Rudy Gobert is yet. So I think Turner is an interesting guy to bring up, but I don't think he's a guy you can realistically say, this is what we we think he is worthy of being a DPOY.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think also the Pacers just struggles on the season probably poured water on his candidacy, which is not his fault. I mean, they, lost Oladipo for LeVert, who then didn't play for 2 months, lost TJ Warren for pretty much the entire year. That Pacers team is going to be really scary next year. I want no part of them next year, but injuries kind of just tanked his case. So, yeah, I think, the Jazz and the Nuggets both having the defenses that they do is also going to give, the Sixers are second in the league in defense. The Jazz are fourth. The Pacers are 16th. So, again, it's, that
doesn't help.
Yeah, typically a DPOY is going to come from a top 5 defense. Like, the Lakers they're number 1 in the league, but, AD and LeBron have missed so much time that there's no one on that team that really stands out. The Knicks, I love Nerlens Noel, but I think that's more of a team-wide Tom Thibodeau thing than anything else. I think it's Gobert and Simmons pretty resoundingly, and it's at that point it's a personal preference. As much as I enjoy seeing what Ben Simmons does, and I think you can make an argument that having a Ben Simmons may be more valuable in a playoff context. Having someone who can guard an elite opposing wing like that and give a Jason Tatum, a Kawhi Leonard, a LeBron James, any of the Paul George, whatever, Kevin Durant, give those guys trouble, might be more valuable than a Rudy Gobert who can be played off the floor. Like, Ben Simmons is not going to be played off the floor defensively. But in the regular season, I think Rudy Gobert is the slight favorite. If I had to pick today, I'd pick Gobert as well.
I would agree. There is a name that I don't think we brought up because I don't think he's there at all at this year, but I wouldn't be shocked if he's there next year. Mikal Bridges.
I thought you were going to say Matisse Thybulle.
So I love Matisse's defense, obviously, but I wonder if he's ever going to get enough minutes on the court to actually justify a DPOY selection, just because his offense is so raw still, and given how old he is, I mean, oh boy, I don't have a whole lot of faith that offense is going to come around.
Yeah.
I really don't. Unfortunately so. If he could just have been a knockdown three-point shooter, this guy would be like a 32-minute player.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the key. If he develops offensively, they're going to give him all the minutes he can get, but he still has a ways to go.
He's just not there.
Yeah.
But Bridges, on the other hand, is a 41% three-point shooter. Like, he's not, a star offensively. So I just looked it up. Coincidentally, he is averaging 32 minutes.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. And he's averaging 13 points per game. Like, that's fine. It's not something major, but that's also not where he's needed. He's needed defensively and to be able to contribute sporadically offensively. You know, being a spot up shooter, someone who occasionally would put the ball on the floor. You know, but Bridges, I think, is the type of guy who plays so much off ball and isn't really being reliant upon having a great offensive impact, that he can maintain a very, very high defensive enthusiasm, intensity, whatever you want to call it, throughout the course of a game. Like, so to Ben's credit, he's an all-around guy. Ben is also averaging like 7+ assists. He's scoring 15 points. There is an added burden of responsibility for Ben from an offensive perspective. Whereas I think Bridges down the line, be that next year, maybe the year after that, I think because he has that much less of a burden offensively, but he's still relevant on that end of the floor, we are seeing a guy who ultimately in a couple of years could be a defensive player of the year candidate just because he could allocate that necessary time to just key in on, the LeBrons, the Kawhis, whatever.
Yeah.